The idea that I had starting out in business was just the idea of society imposed upon me, right? Before you stop and start to ask yourself some deeper questions of why am I even thinking this way?
The goal is still efficiency. And how do we become more efficient with the team that we have? For the ones that want to raise their hand and be like, yes, sign me up for that. I can see where this could be valuable.
Deciding to work longer and planning to have income coming in longer than what you were previously thinking should directly translate into you having more time to spend with your kids and your spouse and your friends and everyone else right now.
Welcome to Money Mavericks, the podcast where we explore the dynamic world of finance, investment, and entrepreneurship.
I'm Kirk Drake.
And I'm Daryl Hicks. Together, we're here to bring you the latest insights, expert opinions from the trailblazers who are redefining success in the financial world. Figuring out what you're passionate about and then figuring out what problems need to be solved now that you start to build some skills. And I think it all ties in nicely to what you're even doing with the AI, because if ever there was a time where we need to be leaning in and otherwise, run the risk of getting left behind, I think the people that can really upgrade themselves with these AI tools, whether it's a company or an individual, is the one that's going to have a massive strategic advantage, but also, how long are you going to be relevant in this workplace if you don't have these skills? But it really starts with that curiosity. Is that something that you would agree with, that you see on your side as well?
1000%, Daryl. It was actually one of my favorite interview questions when I was hiring new talent. I was like, tell me about your curiosity, right? Give me an idea of what do you do in your spare time? Or like, how is your mind? How does it work? How is it going to blend into how my mind works or the team that you're actually integrating into with? And do you have that level of curiosity, or is everything having to be force-fed to you, right? Not going to be a great fit. But do you have the curiosity to learn and figure things out as they go? Because I'm not going to handhold the whole time. I want you to, be as self-sufficient as possible. And I think with, kids in particular, right? Every year my kids are, younger than yours, 9 and 11 right now. So I would teach the third graders at their school that they're at, just talk about entrepreneurship and launching products. And they would have a kids in business program where it was like, hey, they get $20 and they've got to come up with a new idea. And it was just amazing to see, third graders really still curious, right? And I still am curious of when children lose curiosity, right? When does that go away and why, right? Why do we lose that level of potential curiosity of figuring out how things are made or how to fix something? Instead of just, we'll just buy a new one or replace it, right? The society of just, we can have whatever we want here in America, right? We're so spoiled with that, but not like truly learning the nuts and bolts that go into a manufacturing process or how things are actually made and what it actually costs to bring to market.
Yeah, it's so wild to see how things are evolving so quickly too. I'd love to hear, there's so many things that I want to unpack from the journey, like, growing and selling an SEO business, discovering that you're unemployable. This is like a common theme for entrepreneurs as well. But I'm really curious about what it is that you're doing on the AI side, like implementing AI for large companies. Like, maybe unpack that just a little bit. What does that look like right now?
Yeah, it's honestly all over the place, Daryl, but it's evolved, right? So doing this for the last, call it 3 years, 2.5 years, it's really interesting to see the different businesses that are approaching it, the C-suite that finally gets it and gets clued in, because we're typically dealing with an older board, if you will, or an older team, especially at B2B companies that do things one way and that's the way that they're going to do it. And they're finally seeing the writing on the wall. Many times when they're hiring, younger talent, usually in the marketing department or maybe even operationally, that are coming in and they're saying, hey, we're not doing this or this, or our competitors, we can see that they're already doing this, or the speed to get a quote from one of these companies when you do an intelligence gathering piece is much faster than, the industry used to allow. And I think the disruption that's happening is across all industries, right? And it's not a matter of, AI as a, technology. It's truly, or AI as the future. AI is the infrastructure that they all need to be thinking about. And what I'm trying to teach all of these companies and C-suites is replace, this is how we do it with how could AI do this, right? Because more than likely, one step or multiple steps of the current process need to be replaced and can be replaced by AI with just spending the time of evaluating the entire workflow of how does it go from A to B, or from, someone interested in us to us shipping the thing to them. How and what are all of those steps? Let's evaluate those and break those down, because likely there's either tools or additional processes, and a lot of times additional headcount that do not need to be there anymore, or that are due to getting phased out in the next 3 to 6 months once implementation passes kind of the Q&A.
I tend to see kind of 3 layers of it. So the first phase is this like curiosity. How do I use it to write a job description for myself or write some emails? And then the second phase is, okay, how do I do this agentic stuff of how do I get Roy to be faster at what Roy's doing, break those steps down. And the third phase, which to me is, I'd love to know if you run into this at all, which is it's the cross-departmental skills. It's where instead of a call center person having to talk to a loan officer and they both have this unique discipline and skill, AI is better at, it's 80 or 90% as good at both their jobs. And now you've eliminated the mismatch of communication, between those two people. And so I spend a lot of time looking for where are all those intersections in the company and how do you build a GPT or something around that to solve that. And I find that to be hugely impactful. And then the fourth layer is, and how do we add more, right? Or how do we add more value? Because it turns out there's this whole set of things you just couldn't do before because you were bottlenecked at an individual, that now you can do 10 additional steps in that process. And mostly what I find is, let's say 99% of the people I talk to in financial services are stuck at, I'm writing a job description. They haven't even gotten to layer 2, layer 3, layer 4 in that. And so as you start showing them some of these use cases, that's, to me, do you see that in the enterprise space as well?
I do. And it's across the board, right, Kirk? Like where you can actually provide the most value, or like the wow moment that they all have when you're like, oh, I didn't know that I could take a picture of my pantry and you could, create recipes for me this week and save me time that way. Yeah. Right. Like just even like the non-business side of it is like, I think the most wow that people get, where I'm just like, did you know you could actually do this or do that with it? Right. But from the technical standpoint, in terms of people and the implementation of it, all companies need to be upskilling their employees. Yeah. Right? Like, not be scared of it. I think the phrase is like, someone, you're not going to be replaced by AI, but someone using AI is going to replace it. Right. That's across the board for the most part, in terms of most of the industries and enterprises that I'm working with, where if they're not using it, their inefficiency scores are through the roof in terms of, output and what was allowed versus what needs to be allowed today. I think what's really interesting is during that retooling and reskilling, there's tremendous opportunity for new jobs, right? We talk about AI displacing all of these jobs, but, without that curiosity, plus I think the other element of that is the value that you're bringing, whether it be to the world itself or the company that you work for, or the business that you've started, those two elements, there's a lot of new jobs that need to be created around this, right? Like data at the end of the day needs to be as clean and succinct and usable as possible. And typically that is the first break or failure that I see in a lot of companies, in terms of not truly having a data steward that's owning all of the company data that could be used departmentally across the board, right? So there's a variety of different ones, like a prompt operations manager, someone that's just managing the prompts that are being used inside of the company. There's tremendous value in those assets, right? When that company goes to sell. And I think a lot of C-suite didn't realize that, of like, oh, if we actually create this library of prompts that make our employees more efficient, then our exit value is, a multiple of that now. So there's a variety of new roles that I'm seeing evolve in, depending on the company, the size, the regulatory environment internally in their company. So it's just an exciting space, but every company is kind of facing different challenges, but the goal is still efficiency. And how do we become more efficient with the team that we have? For the ones that want to raise their hand and be like, yes, sign me up for that. I can see where this could be valuable.
On Money Mavericks, we don't just talk about making money. We explore the innovative strategies and bold decisions that drive real change. Whether you're an experienced investor, a budding entrepreneur, or just someone looking to make smarter financial choices, we've got something for you.
Every week, we're going to sit down with industry leaders, visionaries, and mavericks who share their journeys, challenges, and breakthroughs, from contrarian views on market trends to the secrets behind building a successful startup. You get an inside look at what it takes to thrive in today's economy.
And we promise to keep it real, engaging, and most importantly, actionable. No jargon, no fluff. Just straightforward conversations that you can apply to your own financial journey.
So get ready to challenge your thinking, expand your knowledge, and take control of your financial future. This is Money Mavericks,
where we turn financial dreams into realities and mavericks into legends.
A lot of what pushes you to make those kinds of sacrifices is that hunger, that dark side of the force kind of hunger, right? Or am I wrong on that?
Maybe. I think that saying that it was bad, I think net it was mostly good. Like, I didn't use the power, the force to do harm to anybody. I might have been like messing with my central nervous system more. And I got to a point where after 30 years of feeling like I need to have that energy or carry that energy in me, that I couldn't do it anymore. But I think, like, just take the word like manipulation, for example, right? Like, that could also be influence or persuasion. And if I can manipulate somebody, I don't think that word by itself is light or dark. It's what I do with it at the end of the day. And I think for me, the problem was I was waking up after I had the sale of my practice, after I sort of like won the game that most of us are playing. And I got to step back and say, what game do I want to play now? And realize that, like, okay, I'm waking up looking for an adversary. Who am I going to prove wrong today? And this isn't like a way to live, and I don't want to do this. And the book that I wrote came from a very pure place and a very good place. And the result of getting really clean and giving up the addictions. When I say addictions, like, I wasn't an alcoholic, but I was addicted to having a glass of wine or two every single night as a way to relax and unwind at the end of the day. I was addicted to having nicotine every hour or two as a way to stay in flow. And I said, well, what would it look like if I tried to no longer have to need anyone or anything in order to feel a certain way? And I don't recommend quitting everything at once like I did, but I did that and I got to a pretty good place. And I will say that I when you are at this place that I'm at now, which is I'm not running off of looking to prove anybody wrong. I'm not looking I don't have any past traumas that are carrying me around. I don't know, man. Maybe I could use a little bit of that. I don't know.
I think there's like a really good point in there, which is I think that dark energy leads to burnout. And if you're focused on the right energy and you're looking at, okay, I'm going to spend 80 hours, but I'm going to constantly be calling this to things that I have special gifts for, that I really enjoy, and I'm moving it, then it starts being accretive and not draining, right? And then you don't have to fear burnout. One of the things you talk about in the book is the rule of, retiring at 65. Walk us through where that came from, the history, the nonsense.
So it started in 1889 in Germany while they were putting together the first ever social retirement type plan. And the chancellor was Otto von Bismarck, and he picked the age of 65 because that was the age that people were expected to live until. So, hey, like, let's take the average age of death and make that the age that we'll start paying people out. And that they raised it to 70 about 10 years later. But FDR putting together the Social Security Act in 1935 thought 65 sounded like a good number. And at the time, like, if we were to play it out, somebody that was getting Social Security in like 1945, let's say, you would get a third of what you needed to live on from Social Security. You would get a third of what you need to live on from a pension. And those don't really exist for most people anymore. And then you would have to come up with like the final third for yourself for a period of like 6 or 7 years because you were going to die at 72. And so the age of 65, and now some people will call it 67 but I think most people still associate 65 with being the age that you retire, has never been adjusted to keep up with how much life expectancy has increased over the past, 100 or so years. And again, like, I don't think that we were put on this earth to do something that we don't enjoy for 30 years, to earn the right to sit around and not have to do anything at all after that for another 30 years.
Mm. Yeah. I remember, like, coming back to what Kirk was saying, I remember when I would, I talk about this with my buddies who we were starting businesses, running small businesses. And the goal was to see how quickly we could retire. How quickly could we make enough money that we could just live off of it? And that was the measuring stick. Along the way, something changed where all of a sudden I realized, actually, I'm just having so much fun. Like, what would it be like to build a life that I didn't have to retire from or that I didn't want to retire from? Which still, there's a lot of issues around that. Like, my kids haven't completely made their peace with this idea. Like, what do you mean you're always going to be working? And I'm like, yeah, I mean, look, it might look a little different than it does today, but I'm always going to have some projects on the go. Like, I want to have a seat at the table and doing interesting things when I'm like 80, 85 years old. And I'll have a lot of value from all the experience that I've accrued over all the years that I want to provide to people as well. But I think that this is it's not many people that get to that point. Like, we're, the idea that I had starting out in business was just the idea of society imposed upon me, right? Before you stop and start to ask yourself some deeper questions of why am I even thinking this way? Or it's just, well, this is what everybody does, right? And this is how society works. You're going to work. Maybe you have a job you hate. Maybe you have a job you love. Most people, don't really like what they do to make a living. It's something that they have to do, kind of to your point, so that you can get to this end goal. I love the fact that you're like calling that into question. I'd love you to kind of like, so why that though, Derek? Like, why this book, calling all of this into question and helping people to reframe it?
So look, in theory, deciding to work longer and planning to have income coming in longer than what you were previously thinking should directly translate into you having more time to spend with your kids and your spouse and your friends and everyone else right now. So I share a story in the book called A Tale of Two Tonys, and it's about a guy, Tony, who's 45 years old. He makes $150,000 a year, and he has $150,000 saved up for retirement. His financial advisor tells him if he wants to have a traditional retirement at 65, he needs to save about $2,400 a month between now and then, adjusted for inflation every single year. And that's a non-starter for most people. I mean, that's 20% total of what he's making. That's close to him saving as much as he is spending when you back out taxes. So most people in that situation, they freak out. They're like, oh my gosh, I'm behind. I have to spend even less time at the gym and less time sleeping and less time with my family. I have to catch up. Tony's wife in the book, I'm skipping over a lot of the fun, dramatic flair, but she's like, look, you're not going to ever stop working. Like, you like what you do. You like the people that you do it with. Even if you're not doing this, you'll probably be doing something else. So he calls up his financial advisor and he says, okay, can you change the age to 75 instead of 65? And what that does to the numbers is that in the first example, we had to save $2,400 a month to stop working at 65. That number goes down to $110 per month if he were to stop working at 75, which is a 96% reduction in the amount that he has to save. So you can just feel the collective sigh of relief that people have when I present this to them. And the reason for it is, in the first example, we have 10 less years of saving, 10 less years of that money compounding, and then we need the money to last for 30 years, because in both scenarios, I have him dying at 95. In the second example, he has 10 more years of working, 10 less years of needing to pull the money out, 10 additional years of compounding interest, and then the money only has to last for 20 years. And we've all seen these articles about how we should have saved more when we were 22 to take advantage of compounding interest. And whether we did or we didn't, we sort of feel dumb for not doing it more. But look, we're making, hopefully we're making a lot more money now than we were at that time. You don't see any articles talking about how you get the same benefit by just letting it sit for an extra 10 or 15 years longer on the back end, right? And so this is, I'm creating real dollars in real time for people seemingly out of thin air. Like, everyone understands that they should spend more time taking better care of themselves and spend more time dating their spouse and spend more time with their kids and spend more time sleeping. But at the end of the day, there's this pink elephant in the room, which is, well, how am I going to afford to do this? And what I'm here to tell people is that you can afford it because you're going to have this income coming in later on now that you weren't previously counting on. And that's sponsoring you to make these different choices right now. It's almost like someone's writing a check. Your future self is writing a check for your current self to allow you to now, like, be home in time for more dinners, go to the gym more, play more golf, hang out with your friends, do all of that.
Yeah. That's a really those are some powerful numbers, from $2,400 all the way down to, what'd you say, 110?
Thanks for tuning into this episode of Money Mavericks. We hope you found it insightful and inspiring.
Don't forget to subscribe, like, and leave a review on your favorite podcast platform. And be sure to share this episode with someone who needs to hear it.
Stay connected with us on social media and visit our website for exclusive resources, episode transcripts, and more.
Until next time, keep pushing the boundaries, making smart moves, and turning your financial dreams into realities.
You've been listening to Money Mavericks, where Mavericks become legends.